It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. We apologize for being quote-unquote late this week, but we wanted to be complete. We wanted to be thorough. And so we let training camp or mini camp finish. And now a full review podcast of the 3 days, all open to the media, Logan, in which we will seek to answer a couple of key questions. One, did Sam Howell do enough to remain the undisputed QB1, a.k.a. in practice, not have Jacoby Brissett take any reps with the ones when training camp opens in the fall? We'll also take a look at some of the key skill position guys and then a larger look at the defense. That's the schedule for the pod today. And Logan, let's start with the quarterback play. You actually went back and charted all three practices. And let's just start kind of big picture. What are some things that you noticed, key trends for what reputationally was an up and down week for Sam Howell and I think a solid week for Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I thought too. Before I charted it, because when you're watching, you're like, oh, that's kind of a weird throw, or that's kind of this. And when you go back and chart it, you're like, man, he's been crazy efficient on the shorter, quick game stuff and the intermediate stuff. So 5-step drop, 3-step drop, screens, that type of stuff. They kind of had a fake RPO in there, completed that. But when you look at that on the chart, you're like, that is really good. It's very high completion percentages. He's getting the ball where it needs to go. He's getting that ball out on time. The thing that I was a little surprised when looking at the practices after kind of going through all of it was that when the ball is getting pushed down the field, he seems to have a harder time with that stuff. Now, the coverage is tight, all that kind of thing. But in terms of delivering shots down the field in a team setting, so team blitz, team pass, it's just not as clean. I think he threw an interception on the second day where he probably should have thrown the dig. There was a big corner basically kind of clearing out coverage, and there was a dig. He kind of forced the corner, and you're kind of like, why'd you do that? There was the interception that he had the day before. He kind of tried to force it down the seam. It bangs off someone's helmet, gets picked off. And so when you kind of went back through all of his interceptions, even from OTAs, they're all of that kind of stuff where it's it's a little late in the down. He's pushing the ball where it doesn't need to push, and he doesn't anticipate the deep ball with the same dexterity that I kind of had in my mind, right? He was really, really good, short, intermediate stuff, and then the deeper stuff was a little bit, not that he didn't do that, because again, in 7-on-7, for example, he had a beautiful ball to Cole Turner in Tampa 2 that's a little bit behind, but kind of right where it needs to be, and Cole drops it. Not Cole's fault, it would have been a tough catch, that kind of thing, but so he has shown flashes of that, but I'd say on the whole, he struggled a little bit more with those lower percentage throws, pushing the ball down the field.
So that's super interesting because it fits some of what I think most of us took out just watching it live, being there, but not necessarily all of it. Definitely the quick game stuff, which you almost take for granted because it's so quick, it's so efficient. It's just like, okay, well, that next play, got it. But that's going to be a huge part of their offense. So you can just, oh yeah, that's good. Next play. Yeah, let's do that all the way down the field, and then you get in the red zone and you got to execute, or you hit a big one and cool. Where I felt like he struggled from what I've been able to see in the two practices I went to and talking to obviously fellow beat reporters that have been out there for all of it is some of the stuff over the middle. We had discussion of whether his height is actually a factor because it seemed like when he got into 7-on-7, that stuff was a little bit better. And maybe the offensive line, he just hasn't figured out the windows yet. So there's all that kind of, I don't want to call it narrative because it's stuff we saw. It's just when you're able to go back and watch the film, you're able to see it better, clear, more context. You chart it, you kind of start to see some trends emerge on paper that maybe you miss because you're trying to string things together just in your head. So I think that's interesting because it did feel like when he pushed the ball down the field, that was some of his better stuff, but maybe that was more 7-on-7, less team, and is that even accurate once you chart it out? Or is that just, certain plays taking up more space in your mind than others that, when you kind of even them out on paper, it's actually a more even performance?
I definitely think it's the latter there. I think because when you're watching, you're like, oh wow, and I was the same. I did the same thing, and that's why I was surprised by what I charted. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, he's been excellent at this, and you kind of go through, and you're like, it actually hasn't been that great. And I think it's also important to give it some context. Like those throws, league wide, excuse me, are a little bit more like lower percentage, right? You're going to hit
Right.
50% of them. And so the big ones, you're like, wow, that's great. Like for example, on Monday or Tuesday this week, he overthrows Terry McLaurin, right, on a go where he beats Emmanuel Forbes badly, like just misses, right? Next play to Jahan, kind of overthrows again, and it tight coverage. But you're like, you don't kind of put those in the box of like deep throws, but those are deep throws, and you kind of remember the big ones that he hits. But he also has some misses, and those are lower percentage throws, so his percentage is going to be worse there, and that's totally fine and to be expected. It's interesting to think about the middle of the field because I do feel like there are times where he doesn't see the middle of the field unless it's like a big receiver. And that's like Logan Thomas has been pretty good over the middle of the field for him, but Logan Thomas is like 6'7". So, like he can see that guy, can make those throws. Also, their connection, we're going to talk about this more later, has been amazing. It's been totally on point. So that's been really cool to see. But I definitely think the stuff where it's like we're attacking underneath space was better in the analysis. And it should be better because it's a higher percentage throw, but it just kind of jumps out to you a little bit more definitively. And again, when he just seemed a little bit more deliberate, I guess is the word, a little bit more delayed, like he had to see it as opposed to trusting the ball and getting it to where it needs to go. Where I felt like that's where Jacoby did a pretty good job of that, but Jacoby's also holding the ball for a very, very long time to get there, And so it's I kind of subtract points for Jacoby's throws down the field sometimes because they're a little bit too long. And I feel like Sam, again, kind of had some misses down there that, and misreads. I put it all in the same pile. Missed throws, misreads, all that kind of stuff, at least how I identify them. So, but I think overall, I think the first day was a little rough, but going back and watching it wasn't as rough as I originally thought. But he down the field, I was a little surprised. Not as good as I had kind of intuited to start.
Um, Something that I think is worth pointing out and kind of underscoring again here is that, you get in some of these specific periods and they're working on certain things, and you might call, if you're Bieniemy, 6 straight dropbacks. That's never going to happen this year.
Correct.
And so this is where, like, I have come out of this spring. My big takeaway is the most, and this really isn't a change. Like the most important thing is Bieniemy. But it becomes even more apparent how key the play calling is, because there's certain
Yeah.
stuff that Sam executes at an extremely high level. And if he just calls that stuff as often as he can, then I feel like they can be decent on offense, or maybe even, hold your breath, good. And then, on the other side of it, he's got some stuff that's much higher risk. And if they put all that on Sam's plate, like they could be in trouble. But I think you even got to see, it was the day I was out there. So it was Wednesday, how some of the play calling comes into it. I mean,
Yeah.
they got a screen, like 80-yard touchdown on
Yeah.
a screen play in one of the team periods that, they've been working different stuff, and all of a sudden they throw it in there. They hit the timing just right. They hit the misdirection, and next thing you know, was it Gibson? No, it
Yeah.
wasn't or maybe it was
was
Gibson.
It was
Yeah,
Gibson.
he's out. Like 80 yards, truly not practice out, not like, oh, that's cute. The running back did the running back in training camp thing where he runs all the way, no matter how many
Yeah.
people would have tackled him. He was out. And
Yeah.
so if you can set that stuff up well, then go execute it. Again, I think this offense has a ton of potential, but these specific drill settings, I think, underscore how important the play calling is, and to make sure that you give the quarterback the stuff that he's good at and that can execute it consistently at a high level.
And it's also important to that end that the shot plays are usually off of some type of play action, and in these periods, like because they're not running the football, they're not even, it's like a token fake basically, and everyone knows it. The windows in the back end are really, really tight, and I think I expect them to be looser as they game plan, as they prep, as they coach routes to beat specific coverages, and those shot plays will kind of open up a little bit and become higher percentage throws because that's what they did in Kansas City. Also, I think to the screen thing, that was awesome. That play was great. They had another one that they hit on Tuesday, kind of to B-Rob, was also a big play. That's team blitz, and so it kind of goes both ways. It's blitz if we call a screen and we hit it versus this cover. That's what you want. You want screens versus blitzes. But they got it hit perfectly. Sam Cosmi's running down the field. Sadiq Charles is running down the field. You see the athleticism of those guards. You see guys, the left tackle, I think it was Leno, how they block it to ensure that the defensive end's not pursuing to the football. Gates, does a great job kind of capturing the three technique. Like the coaching is so high there. So yeah, I definitely think it's the sequencing of plays is huge. The execution of plays is huge. And I think the efficiency of Sam Howell is definitely correlated or related to that, because one of the reasons he's so efficient underneath is because guys are running better routes. The concepts are better. The windows are better, and they're tight windows and tight throws. And he's done a great job of getting the ball there. So, I like what Sam's done. And I think that was the other thing. When I went back and charted the throws, you realize like how efficient he's actually been and how on time he's actually been. And those things are important to me in my evaluation of a guy who could potentially be the starter. So,
Situationally, I know they worked on some of that stuff, especially on Thursday. Fortier was on the radio show
yeah.
with me and said that it was wildly up and down for Sam through a couple of interceptions and then through like 3 straight touchdowns. How did he look situationally, third down periods, red zone periods?
Yeah, so I actually thought there was some really good stuff that he did in the red zone. Again, the timing's important. It is red zone. You're not going to run the football. Coverage windows are small. I thought the first interception was not his fault at all. I thought it was entirely on Kemp. And I'm not, because Kemp's had a pretty good last couple of days. So I don't want it to be like, oh, everyone kill Kemp. Like he's had a good couple of days, and him and Sam seem to be developing a rapport. Like for example, just to kind of show you what Kemp's been able to do on the first day, so Tuesday, he has a route versus Emmanuel Forbes, and just kind of big bodies him, like throws him by on a stop. Forbes almost falls down. Easy catch for a first down. You love that from your big receiver. In the red zone, however, he's running a crossing route. Percy Butler's cutting the crossing route, and I think he felt like it was zone, like they're in some type of match coverage. To me, it plays like man. Like we had this conversation with Matt Ryan, right? How it kind of it's zone, but it really is man, and that's kind of what he fell into there. And he should have kept running, and he sat down. And
Mm,
and so instead of throwing the ball, he's throwing the ball to a spot, because I think
yeah.
versus man coverage on those crossing routes, you got to keep going. Versus zone, you sit down. So Sam read it as man, Kemp read it as zone. Kemp sat down. He throws the ball. He throws the ball literally right to Percy Butler for an interception. So to me, wildly inconsistent, whatever. Like
Yeah,
that.
the
That's
results
like
are
a
inconsistent, but that's why we go deeper on it to say like, okay, well, Sam actually plus there, good throw, good read,
yeah.
throws with anticipation. The problem is when you throw with anticipation, sometimes the receiver doesn't do what you anticipate, and sometimes it's their fault because they should have.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's what the receiver should do. I don't know for sure, just based on other offenses. I think that's right. His second interception, however, I thought to Troy Apke, I thought was his fault, and it reminded me a lot of the interception he had in the Dallas game. I think he's getting used to kind of defensive back speed. So what I mean by that is they had like a corner or some type of kind of sail route to the back pylon, and instead of just putting that thing high and like where only his guy could get it, he kind of sailed it back there, kind of like he did against Dallas, where he kind of
Mm,
put it up to Cam Sims on the corner. There's a guy underneath. He's trying to get it over the top, but you got to put a little bit more velocity on in the red zone. So Apke kind of runs back under it, makes a pick. I think that's on Sam. I think he's got to kind of develop in that skill set. And another thing I would say is a couple plays later, he gets Curtis Hodges running basically like a high cross. So he starts on the left side of the formation, running high across to the back pylon. They kind of, they pin the coverages down to the other side. Everyone's running stops. The throw is there. Logan Thomas had a touchdown on this against the LA Chargers 2 years ago. Same kind of concept. It's open. And instead of kind of delivering that throw we just talked about, kind of, fast and high, and give your guy a shot because all that space is there, gets a little gun shy, pulls it down, scrambles to the left for a no play. So I would give him a minus there, because I'm like, I think if you want to be an NFL quarterback, in a red zone situation, that's a throw. I think you got to give your guy a shot there. And now that's my opinion. I would tell him that to his face if he asked me about it, but he might say, "Hey man, we're not coaching it like that. We're coaching a different read." And I'd be like, totally fine. But when I look at that, I say that throw, that little kind of that dart over the top throw that's got to get up and down really quick. He seems to be having a hard time with that. He had a hard time with it last year. He's a young player still. He'll get better. So to me, I'd say overall more bad than good, because some of the bad wasn't his fault.
yeah, more good than bad. You meant to say.
Yeah, more. Yeah, more good than bad. What you know
Yeah.
what I meant? More good
Yeah,
than
I
bad.
did. I just want to clarify because now, in case anyone wants to twist it, and of course, I'm going to
We
twist
got it.
I'm going to twist your words and just say you're biased. You want more tight end touchdowns.
I
That's
do. I
all.
want more tight end
That's all you
touchdowns. I
want. You just
do.
want your guy Curtis to.
That's really the crux of it. I mean, he had a Curtis had a touchdown yesterday. Logan had a touchdown yesterday. Bates had one. Come on, we got to get those guys the ball more. So they're
Yeah.
they're doing a great job. So
Yeah. So let's answer the fundamental question real quick, and then we'll get on to one of the tight ends, Logan Thomas, and then some of it what Antonio Gibson did. But if you're Ron Rivera and you're opening training camp, they do have one more practice next week, but it's one practice, whatever. You get to training camp day 1 in July. Is Sam getting all of the 1 reps? Or are you starting to hedge your bets and give Jacoby any 1 reps? And I think I know which way you're leaning. I know what Ron said, but
yeah.
in your opinion, did Howell do enough to remain QB1 without any competition?
Yeah, so I think before before I went back and looked at it, I was kind of like, maybe been a little up and down. But after I went through and charted everything, 100%. Like he
Yeah.
deserves it. Like he's been efficient. Again, he's thrown picks, he's made mistakes, he's a young player, but the talent's there, the arm talent's there, the release is there. The way he's reading stuff is pretty good, man. Like he's making some plays. Like he made a really nice play. I think it was Wednesday where he kind of rolls to his left on a sprint option, and Logan Thomas. So it's a 3-by-1. So there's 3 receivers to the side he's rolling to. Logan Thomas is running an out, and the other 2 guys are running goes, and the coverage is perfect. There's no throw. Logan Thomas stops, and then he kind of opens his shoulder and delivers just a total strike to Logan Thomas in the soft spot of the zone. And it was a heck of a throw. And so he's had enough of those kind of splash plays, and he makes hard stuff look easy on some of this underneath stuff. And so I'm pretty excited about that. And if I'm Ron, I'm betting on that potential. I'm
Yeah.
betting that he doesn't make that same mistake in the red zone. He's not going to force that football there, or we can game plan throws open for him a little bit better than this when the team doesn't know that it's team pass. So I think looking at that, I think he deserves that opportunity, and it's also because Jacoby, again, I have some reservations about how he's been playing the position. Like he's done a really good job. He's a good football player, but he holds the ball a little longer than I'd like him to on some concepts. And is that his fault all the time? Absolutely not. But I like the rhythm and timing with which Sam is playing, and so I want to see more of that. And I'm sure Ron feels the same way.
He does. That is what he said. His answer was a less descriptive version, as you would imagine. He's a head coach. You're a podcaster, at least in your current form. Sorry to reduce you to just being a podcaster.
Yeah, just a podcast.
But in your current form here on this, podcast. But his answer was very similar. He's done enough. He's going to be our guy. And I regret the way I worded the question, because when I say without competition, it is still a competition,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's just like if they're running a race, Sam got a head start. If he stumbles and falls down or runs super slow and Jacoby takes off and is able to perform at a super high level, Jacoby would catch and pass him. That's how races work. But they've run either the same speed or Sam's run, even perhaps based off what you just said, a little bit better. And so Sam has maintained that lead, and thus it's still a competition. He can still trip and fall. Jacoby can still pull, do something amazing and have, a couple great weeks, and maybe they're like, man, this guy's awesome. We need to start him. But realistically, the most likely outcome from the prognosticators is that Sam will open the season as QB1, and that's the outcome I think everybody would like to see, except for maybe Jacoby Brissett. But even Jacoby knows the score. Like he knows what he signed up for.
And I also think like that's why you have like that joint practice with Baltimore.
Yep.
Like again, circle that sucker on your calendar, because if Jacoby comes out and is dealing, because he's seen it before, he knows what that's going to look like. And Sam is sputtering a little bit because, again, like while our defense is good and they've been playing great in this period, and I think that's really forced Sam to elevate his game, it's not going to be anything like what they're going to see in Baltimore. And so how does he handle kind of prepping for a new team, game planning for a new team, in these different practice situations? And I think Jacoby's going to have a little bit of a leg up there. And again, Jacoby's done a good job. I just think Sam's been a little bit cleaner with some of the stuff. So, it'll be really interesting. It'll be really interesting to see that training camp, that joint practice, some of the preseason stuff. So
I tend to think that after those practices, Rivera will officially name the starter.
Doesn't it feel that way?
There's no reason to do it beforehand.
Right.
And afterwards, there's kind of no reason to wait. That is the spot. That's the piece of data that you're waiting for. You get it, you name the starter. you move on. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. Logan, let's talk about a tight end named Logan. Logan Thomas has
Yes.
been a topic of much discussion amongst, I feel like, the fan base even more than the media, because fans look at the contract and it's like, well, he wasn't very good last year. He cost a lot of money. I don't get why they don't cut him. And the reason you don't cut him is because you don't need the cap space. And he might just still be a really good football player. And it
Yeah.
looks like so far in camp, from what you've seen, I get the sense he's still a pretty good football player.
Yeah, man, and he's doing a really nice job. It looks a little different, I think, than a lot of fans would like, where it's the guys at the position are Darren Waller, Travis Kelsey, and George Kittle, guys who are like super twitchy, explosive guys. Logan's not really like that. More of a long strider, kind of basketball, kind of weaving in and out of coverages, but has a really good feel for zones, has a really good feel for man, is gigantic, and uses his size at an extremely high level to beat players, right? And he's been able to do that. Him and Sam seem to be on the same page. Like, last week in the OTA period, running a dig, sits down in his own ball, runs a swirl on Benjamin St. Juste, which is kind of a corner to a comeback kind of angle. So, like, you're running a corner and then you come back on that angle and you run it for spacing reasons. And he beats Benjamin St. Juste, kind of bodying him out, gets the ball, runs a choice the other day, big body catch. I mean, he's had so many catches. He's been probably the most consistent offensive player this entire period. And it's because of he's utilizing his size. You can tell they've kind of pulled the reins off a little bit. One of the things that Travis Kelsey does that is beautiful is that he runs routes to beat coverages, and him and Patrick Mahomes are on the same page. And we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast before, but Logan is doing that now with Sam, and that is cool. That's really cool, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of trust. Like, when Sam's in trouble, it's not like I'm looking around. It's like, where's Logan? I'm throwing the ball. And Logan, more often than not, bodies the guy out, makes a nice catch, and makes a play for him. So
Yeah.
I think, again, not the twitchiest or the fastest guy in the whole world, but a big guy with good hands who feels zones well and has been very productive through these, 9 practices? So,
Yeah, I know it's cliche, but he's a former quarterback, and he
right.
definitely plays like it at times, where he's got that understanding of zone, of leverage. Hey, defender's here. I have to angle my body this way. I have to run to this spot. I need to, set my hands to here to get targeted. Like, in the same that we talked about, Brissett has this ability to really dot, balls away from leverage and throw with, NFL caliber precision. Like, Logan is kind of that as a target.
Right.
I guess the best way I can describe it, he understands exactly where he needs to be to shield a guy. And the amount of times he's caught balls with guys trying to come through him is very high, even in the 2
Yep.
practices that I went to. And I will add, for him to do that while coming back from the ACL, and I know obviously he was, he's back at this point basically,
Right.
but that's the kind of stuff that's hard. Like, ACL injuries, what you fear is like that quick stop and, too much pressure going forward on your knee. And for a guy to be draped all over your back as you hit a comeback and to have the body control to be upright and do the proper, kind of things you need to do with your body to shield, like, that's a lot. That's an intense
Yeah.
ask. And he has done that extremely well. And I think that's great. I think it shows the kind of the reason that he's still here, right? The reason they didn't cut
Yeah.
him is because he's still their best option. Has Cole Turner flashed? Sure. Has Curtis Hodges flashed? Sure. Bates does something kind of different. They've had obviously
He's been
lost.
good too. He's
Yeah,
been good.
they've lost Armani Rogers, which really stinks because I thought he could be so special and dangerous. But really, like, it's not Kansas City where Kelsey's the special guy and the receivers just have to do enough. The
Right.
special guys here are the receivers. You want a tight end who you can just solidly rely on to do his job, and Logan Thomas seems to be fitting that to an absolute T.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect characterization, and in this kind of only passing environment, like, it's been tough, man. It's been tough for the receivers. The windows have been really tight. Forbes, St. Juste, Fuller, Percy Butler, Forrest have done a great job. Quan has they've done a great job of matching concepts. And so some of that deep stuff hasn't, like we talked about, hasn't been great. And so Logan Thomas has been the benefit of that. And I do think it helps that he's a big body and you can see him from like the moon damn near. So I really think he's positioned himself to go in to have a really good training camp and show why he deserves to be a bigger part of this offense. And you mentioned Curtis, or you mentioned Cole. Cole's the same thing, done a really nice job. And I think when you look at the utilization patterns of practice, you see that EB and this offensive staff understand that as well. They had a 14 personnel package out there the other day, twice, in the red zone, and with a Gibson, and it feels like that's something that's real. That those guys can win one-on-ones, you can find separation and make plays with those big bodies. So, I think all those guys are going to be a part of this. Logan especially, but Cole's going to get touches. He's been great on like choices and snags, and had a really nice catch on a double move, which we didn't talk about, but I think that was the second week, the second practice. He got like a little out and up, like beat the line, beat a corner, did a great job, man. So that whole group to me is one of the most compelling groups because I think they just allow you, they give you so many advantages. They give you plus advantage in the run game. They give you plus advantage in the pass game if the defense is matching and running personnel. Like think about, I don't know how you don't match 14 personnel with goal line. And if you match with goal line and you come out and empty, you've got a defensive end trying to cover one of those guys, and that's just not good football, right? So I'm very excited about the potential of that group and how EB seems to be using them, and obviously there's a lot of time left, a lot of training camp, a lot of growth. Got to put the pads on. How does Curtis Hodges look with the pads on? How does Cole look with the pads on? But very excited for that group.
Yeah, a lot of camp to go. There's an entire run game to install and see how they look as blockers because that's obviously
Big
critically
part of it.
important. And then there's roster decisions to be made. You can't do 14 personnel if you don't have 4 tight ends.
Correct.
And not having 4 tight ends is how most NFL teams operate. Most teams have 3. So these are the big questions, but also the versatility of these guys is going to allow for some different things. You see how they do on special teams. That's going to matter for some of these guys. So these are the Bieniemy can come up with all the things he wants. They've got to eventually field a 53, and some of what they can do is going to be impacted by that. Not to put a buzzkill on it, but just something to keep in the back of everyone's mind.
And they do have a precedent of keeping 4. They kept 4
Yeah.
last year, kept 4 the year before. They seem to understand the value of it. They just haven't used it. And I'm not saying this is going to be an every play thing. Let's make sure that's perfectly clear. But it's a nice change up to what you're really good at, especially in the red zone where you do play a lot of goal line. So again, cautiously optimistic. That group has been a lot of fun to watch. They've all been pretty productive. I mean, Sam 48 on your show talked about the touchdowns. Curtis had one, Logan had one, Bates had one. Like that group's been very, 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 very consistently productive, and kudos to them because obviously the tight end coach is now helping with the offensive line, Juan Castillo, and then so Storm has done a good job of coming in there and getting everybody coached up. So credit to that whole group. They've been really to me. And I know I'm biased, whatever, but they've been one of the standout groups for training camp.
Love it. Other guy you wanted to talk about before we hit the defense is Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, man. I'm excited.
What have you seen from him?
I'm so excited for him, dude. Like, everyone talks about he's the receiver, he's this, he's really just a good space player that can catch the football. And we've been kind of waiting and like hoping for something to come along that for someone to utilize him in a dynamic way, and it just hasn't happened. It hasn't come to fruition that way, which has been super frustrating for him. But the screen, you mentioned that's an explosive play, getting in the football in space. He's running choices now. He's got to work on that skill set a little bit, kind of that super sudden, but he's getting those opportunities. The other day, in the red zone, they're in like a snug 2-man set. So like, there's an F receiver and an X receiver over there. I think it was Kurt. It might have been Logan and Terry, and Gibson is offset in the gun to that side, and he is so fast that when he got out in that route, like they ran 3 verticals, and he from the backfield, it looked like they were all on the same level. And I'm like, that is a true receiver set there, but it looks like you can run the ball from it, and you can run the ball from it. And he caught the football and did a great job catching a vertical. So I just look at him and I'm like, I'm excited for how EB seems to be thinking about using him. And developing that skill set that we've all been asking for. And, Fred Smoot brought this up on the show that, like there's no such thing as like kind of a 3-headed monster in the backfield with regards to touches, because there's not enough run touches to go around. But if Gibson ends up with 30 catches and 40 carries, like that's not a bad year for him, and that's a very productive season. So I'm excited for him. They seem to kind of be evolving their thought process to kind of maximize him. And just like that tight end group, I think he's a guy that's going to really, really benefit from the creative mind of Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, definitely. Just the more pieces you can move, the better. I mean, him and Samuel seem like the two guys that are, and we talked about it. It was like, who's the gadget player? And like Curtis fits that more because when we think about those types of players, it's like, oh, that's unexpected. You break the huddle in 11. Now Curtis in the backfield, and you're in what's really 21, or you were, you didn't have any running backs in the game, and now you got Curtis back there, and you got two tight ends in, and you're able to run it. So there's like all kinds of different things that you can do with the guy like that. But I think that what makes the Kansas City offense so special, besides Mahomes and besides Kelsey, is their ability to generate space. And so if you were Antonio Gibson and you were a space player, having a guy who knows how to create space seems like a good guy to be your coach. And it just always strikes me when I watch Kansas City how open everybody feels all the time. And sometimes it's because Mahomes runs around and is able to throw an underhand pass left-handed to a guy who's just done a good job in the scramble drill. But there's so much of that offense that's on time, on target, and open. And that, I think that gets me super excited. And if I'm Gibson, I spend the next couple of weeks also watching a lot of Jerick McKinnon tape, because that dude had 9 receiving touchdowns last year. 9 receiving touchdowns as a running back. So
that should be great.
That would be, I think if Antonio Gibson has 9 touchdowns this season, the Commanders will be doing okay.
I agree. And,
bold take.
Bold take. And the other thing I think to kind of supplement that point about creating space, they also speak to skill sets. And so we're not asking Gibson to do something that he can't do. We're asking him to do something he can do. We're not asking Logan Thomas to do something he can't do, or any of those other guys, right? And I think that is something that gets, in addition to the space thing, gets me really fired up, is we are finding what people are good at. Like Jahan, for example. Jahan has been excellent in the slot here, running choices, running kind of short intermediate stuff. And that was something I thought he would be doing more last year, but he didn't. And so everyone's getting magnified by what Eric's brought. And I think that is something that obviously it's early, but when training camp comes, I hope that continues, and, into the preseason, into the joint practices.
Yeah, we send our prayers up to the football gods that it goes even beyond that into the regular season. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. All right, we've talked about some of the successes of the offense, but there haven't been as many as there otherwise might be if not for the fact that this defense is playing so damn well. What have you seen on that side of the ball that has stood out to you that has you so fired up about what Jack Del Rio's unit is doing?
I mean, it's really just the stuff on the back end, like they're good, man. There's not a lot of big coverage busts. No one's running wide open. I think last year around this time, like William Jackson III, every day it was like, oh man, that was a big explosive play, or Jahan routed somebody up. And like, that's not going on anymore. Like, guys are playing good, physical, smart coverage in the back end. There's small throwing windows. Linebackers are doing a good job. Like, it's cool. It's good stuff to watch. And I don't know who deserves all the credit for that. I don't know if it's the new DB coach. I don't know if it's Jack. I don't know who it is, or just getting good people in the building, getting good young players in. But man, that group is, if they can continue to play like this and continue to grow, that's going to be pretty special. Now, they've only been dealing with coverage concepts, right? So,
Sure.
How does that affect people in their run fits and play actions and screens? And when things are a little bit more complicated, can they still play with that same level of continuity and precision? It remains to be seen. But man, like, they've all done a great job. They've just done a great job matching that stuff. And to me, they're close to the MVP of camp for anybody, for the whole team, is the back end of this defense. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that they've done a really nice job.
Yeah. So someone in the press corps asked Del Rio the other day, I think it was Del Rio, and I was listening to this in a press conference. It might have been Rivera, and I was there. I don't know. They all mushed together eventually. Coaches talking into microphones, reporters asking questions.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was someone asking Del Rio, like, how do you balance being aggressive for turnovers and making sure that you don't have any big mistakes? And he kind of rejected the premise of the question in a way that I appreciated, which is, if you do your job, like you have the chance to create turnovers. You just keep preaching it, and when you're in position, you go make the play. But it's not like you play one way to generate turnovers, and like you might in basketball, right? In basketball, if you're like, hey, we're gonna jump every passing lane, we're gonna really take some risks here. Um, that's not really how football works, because like the ball comes to you, and yeah, at that point you might be like, all right, I'm just gonna be smart and make the tackle, or I might gamble and try to pick this off, and that can result in a big play or an interception, like a big play either way. You miss the ball,
Yeah,
and now your guy's wide open. But because there's only one pass per play, it's not like the ball's whipping around the perimeter in the NBA. Like it's just it's a very different thing. The best way you can generate turnovers is be super solid in what you're asked to do, make the offense's life difficult, and then you either get a strip sack or a guy, quarterback forces a ball and you're in position and you make the play, or it's contested, the ball flies up in the air on a hit, and then you pick it off. The way to create turnovers is to be solid. And I think that
right.
is something that has been very apparent in this camp is they've made things difficult for the offense. And as a result, some balls have been tipped. They've gone up in the air. They probably would have had strip sack opportunities if the quarterbacks were live. And that kind of stuff wasn't necessarily happening last spring when they had all the coverage busts and all the things, because then it's just easy completions, easy big plays for the offense.
Yeah. And last year the success really came from like the blitzes and the kind of stunts that they were running up front, and just how the offensive line was having a hard time dealing with it. And this year it's been like, kind of they do team blitz obviously, but 4-man rushes. And I'm really glad you brought up that solid point, because all the picks, none of them have been like gambly picks. It's been like the quarterback's trying to get the ball where he thinks it should go, and they're there. They're just
Yeah.
there. The ball gets tipped up, it gets batted, it gets whatever. It's
Or it's
tight
just it's a
cover.
hard throw and it's
Right.
off by 2 yards, and the safety gets it instead of the receiver.
And that's been exactly right. So it's not like there's been like this kind of wild west of people cutting all these routes and doing all this crazy stuff. That's not been the case. It's been just good, consistent football, and guys playing tight coverage, and guys challenging guys at the line of scrimmage, and bailing off and disguising and communicating. So, I think that's been, quite frankly, that's been a highlight for me. Honestly, is that group. And I don't want to oversell because they're still young. And again, there's no runs. The whole offense isn't in probably for EB. He's not game planning. At least that's what Ron has said and what EB has alluded to. So lot of stuff still to go. But I think as a starting point, you feel pretty good about it. You feel pretty good about adding some new pieces and not seeing a lot of mental mistakes. So kudos to that back end group.
Yeah. I think, especially when you're this talented, like just make them earn it. And that's the
Yeah,
difference. Like if you want to say, okay, well, what's a gambly type of defense? What are people talking about? Like Wink Martindale realized last year in New York that talent wise, he did not have it, especially on the
right.
back end and especially after a bunch of injuries. So it's like, okay, we cannot cover for 3-4 seconds or we're going to get diced. So he blitzed at a rate that like you never see in the league. He just absolutely sent the house. And that forces quarterbacks to make throws. And that's when it becomes risky. That's when it becomes, not necessarily like, am I going to jump this route or make the tackle, just be solid, allow the completion and then be there. No, those kinds of decisions, but like we might be at a numbers disadvantage and we better hope that one of our guys is close enough to make the
Correct.
tackle,
Right.
or that the quarterback guesses wrong. And that's how we're going to generate the interception because we've sent so many guys after him. And I think that with the talent they have and it's really not just the physical talent, Logan, but like the intellectual talent that they have,
Seems that way. Yeah.
they can
Seems. I know we
trust
don't
their
know.
yeah. But at this point, it seems like Jack will be able to call, one, you have a 4-man rush that should be able to get home with regularity because they're talented individuals up front rushing. Two, you actually trust your coverage to not just play the first 3 seconds of the down, but continue to plaster and have that intelligence and the communication and all the things you need on the back end to prevent the big play busts. And that's where a defense can become really, really good is they're just solid. They make you earn it. It is, I mean, you can speak to it, obviously, having played NFL offense better than I can, but like when you just feel like you are banging your head against the wall and there's no exploiting mistakes, you have to make a play every play if you want something good to happen. That is such a tall task for an NFL offense and a formula, I think, for this team to win. And it goes with obviously ball control a little bit on offense, allowing them to stay fresh defensively, and kind of this total team thing that they're going to want to try to do. But for the defensive part in that, the trust, the intelligence, those things standing out already gives me a lot of encouragement heading into the summer.
I agree. And like to the solid point against NFL defenses, like the most solid defense that I ever played against was the Seattle defense when they were going to the Super Bowl. Like they were like they didn't do anything special. They just ran cover 3 and they ran it better than you ran your offense. And they asked their rush to get home, and that's what they did. And they were really good at it. And so again, this is a little different, a little more complicated, a little bit more nuanced. But I think there's a lot of precedent in NFL history. Tampa Bay running Tampa 2 all the time, like literally like 70% of the time, because the teams just weren't patient enough. And if you can do that and play at a high level, you get the football. So, yeah, man, I'm excited about that back end group. And you mentioned the 4 down guys. It was nice having Chase and Montez, back in the mix this week. And Chase looked good. He's out there for 3 practices, so I think he had like a total of like 60, 55 plays in the whole week. But looked twitched up, looked focused, looked ready to go, looked great in individual. Still a lot of football left for him too, but kind of adding him back, and he looks like he's back from the knee. And then Montez was operating at a very veteran tempo, I'll say. So not going easy, but not going as hard as he can, like being where he's supposed to be, fitting up and kind of working with the offensive line, which is what a good pro does in these kind of situations. But look good, looks ready. And then you add that to Casey Tuhill, F.A. Obata, who's had a great, both of them. Casey's been very productive, honestly, over the OTA period. And then F.A.'s been great. James Smith-Williams been in and out. I think he had an excused absence last week.
Yeah.
But that's a really cool group of edge players there. KJ Henry had a very solid kind of first couple practices, quieted down as they went. But I think that's a really compelling group. And then the interior group, shoot, man, maybe the best in football, which is, saying something. You got Payne, Allen, Ridgeway, and Big Phil, who's looked good too. So I think that group is also very exciting. I'm really excited, really, really excited to see them in training camp. Like, so excited, because I think that group, if they can gel, like the way that like Casey and James and Montez were rushing kind of cohesively with the 3 techniques last year, if they can do that again with Chase, gosh, that group is going to be special. Now, can they get there? I don't know. So
yeah, that's the hope. It's going to be on Chase in a lot of ways, both from a physical ability standpoint. What is he after the injury? Looks so far, all reports are very, very, very positive. And then mentally, the discipline and the types of things that he lacked in year 2 showed a little bit. I thought that part of his game he showed well at the end of last year. He just didn't have the physical component. But we'll see what happens when they get into the summer and then ultimately into games this fall. Linebacker wise, Barton, I know, flashed a couple times, showed some things. Mayo was playing a lot of reps because Jamin is not healthy at this time. What did you see from the middle of the defense?
The guy that stood out to me the most was Kalik Hudson.
Love it.
Every day. Like, he just would kind of do something. You're like, who's that? Who's that? Oh, that's 47. That's a great blitz. Oh, who sniffed out that screen? Oh, that's 47. Who's in man coverage on this receiver here in the slot? Oh, that's Kalik. Like, he looks great, and I think we were talking the other day, you and I were talking, or I was talking with someone on the show, and they were saying that, someone was talking about Jamin being injured and are they worried about it? And Jack was like, Kalik's look great, and I think he has looked great. And if he keeps playing this way, man, like, I don't think there's a lot of need to be super worried about the linebacker group, man, because I forget how sneaky good of an athlete he is. He's very twitchy. He's good in space.
Safety at Michigan. It's taken him a couple of years to convert, but maybe this is the year. Maybe he figured it out by the Dallas game last year. Everyone likes to talk about that Dallas game, and it's one game, and obviously people do the same thing with Howell. It's like, did he finally figure it out? It's like, I don't know. Guys have good and bad games. Maybe he had a good game. Maybe he'll then have 3 bad ones to start the season, and he'll never get to play again because that was his chance. We don't know, but the fact that he's shown the same stuff he's shown in that Dallas game, the confidence, the awareness, and the ability to use his physical gifts, I think is extremely encouraging.
Yeah. And again, like it applies to everybody on this defense. there's not a lot of run stuff. So it's like we're covering passes and we're blitzing, and he's really good at that stuff. So it'll be interesting again when they put the pads on and he has to do some of that stuff. But he's probably been at the middle level of the defense, probably been my biggest standout. Obviously, Cody's had a good, great OTA period, minicamp period, but Khalif, just the flashes and what he's been and the way he's been flashing has been really high. But again, like it's 9 unpadded practices. It's part of the evaluation. Was it good? Yes. It has to continue to be good for this team to get to where they want to go. So,
Yeah. Do you expect anything meaningful to happen on Tuesday? I'm expecting a lot of veterans not to be there.
I kind of expect the same thing. Is it? And I was going to ask you this: is it listed as a practice or is it listed as a workout?
I believe it's an OTA practice, and I think that they will practice because like it's a 2 hour, they're on the field 10:30 to 12:30.
Yeah,
So I assume because they got stripped of the other practices that they will, this is the week they would normally have 3, but they're only having 1 because they're not allowed
right,
to have 3.
right,
Um, I'd assume they do it, but also between the air quality stuff, which hopefully is cleared up by then,
right.
and the fact that they had the mini camp and can let guys go, I'd almost, if I was Ron, be like, Terry, see ya. Like John, Duran, like
And
go home, start your off season, have a great time. We're gonna take some reps for these younger guys, and we'll see you. We'll see you in late July.
if you remember last year, they did something similar. I think it was the last 2 days of OTAs last year, but basically it was like 2s and 3s, like go get it,
Yeah.
have fun. And it was awesome because you got to see a lot of the younger guys and kind of help that evaluation and see where those guys are at. I think they cut one of the backup quarterbacks after that day because they were like, well, obviously it's not,
Nope.
it's not where we thought it was. So,
Yeah.
but I'd love that if they're going to do that. Great. But yeah, if you're a veteran, like come support your young guys, maybe put your coach's hat on, put the coach's visor on, and then make sure your plane is leaving at whatever 4 o'clock, and we'll get out of here. So no team
Yeah.
meeting afterwards. Don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out.
Yep. Don't do anything dumb. See you in July.
Yeah, right.
On Monday's pod, let's do a rookie report. Let's
Okay,
go deeper on some of these younger guys. We've kind of mentioned Emmanuel, mentioned Quan, but I would love to go deeper on some of these guys, and then obviously we can see probably more of them. Maybe we wind up actually doing that on Wednesday, depending that way. If that Tuesday practice is very heavy on the younger guys, we have a little bit more data.
sure.
So we'll look forward to that next week. Obviously, look forward to the off season. And now we're getting into silly pod season, Logan.
Silly pod season.
Now it is time to say who would win a game of 11-on-11 football. A team of 11 offensive linemen or 11 skill guys. These are the kinds of things you can come to expect on this podcast. We'll also have some great guests, get some different perspectives on all things Commanders. That's all still to come this summer. Obviously, the sale will get finalized. They had the meeting in New York this week. Things are all heading in the right direction. So eventually we'll have that news sometime in the middle of July. But yeah, we're getting close. We're getting close. Training camp is kind of, it's maybe not around the next corner, but the corner after that. I think we're
It's
getting
down
there.
a long road. It's
Yeah.
it's like a little way down, but it's
Yeah.
close.
Old school directions. Hey, you're going to go down to the Texaco station. It's 5 miles down, then take a left. We're still
That's
5 miles away from the Texaco, but it's the next piece on the directions. All right. In the meantime, if you want more from us, you can hit Logan on Instagram at Logan_Paulson82. We will also do some mailbags, obviously, this summer. So you can start submitting questions there. I'm on Twitter at Craig Hoffman. We'll see you next week on Take Command. In the meantime, I'll see you all on the radio between 4 to 7 on the Team 980. For Logan, I'm Craig. See ya. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do
He's
it.
very, very smart.